Sometimes the Torah will teach us a very profound message, a very important lesson by one word, sometimes even by one mere letter. And we find in this week's Parsha such an example of this, where a person comes to report to the Kohen that he found a nega, he found a sign of tzaras on the walls of his house. And when he comes to the Kohen, he says, Kin nega nirali babayis. Chazal point out that the word kin nega, like a nega, it appears to be a nega. It looks like tzaras, has appeared to me in my home. Why is the Torah presented in such a strange way? Kin nega nirali babayis. Why doesn't the person just simply say, nega, I found the tzaras, with certainty, with conviction, I found the nega tzaras. The word kin nega, the letter chaf, chafadimian, almost seems to give off the impression that the person is not really sure that there really is a nega here. And Chazal say, that's exactly the point. And when the person comes to present to the Kohen, he is not supposed to speak in such a haughty tone, such an all-knowing type of personality. Yes, Mr. Kohen, with absolute certainty, I know for a fact this is the nega. I just need you to sign off on it, because after all, the Torah says only a Kohen can declare it to actually truly be a nega. But between you and me, Mr. Kohen, I know it to be true. No, the Torah says, Kin nega nirali babayis. Come to the Kohen with some anivos, come to the Kohen with humility, come to the Kohen and say, I think, possibly, Lefini is 90, it would appear, efshar, could be, it's possible. That's where one speaks. Of all places in the Torah, why is it so important for the Torah to drive home this lesson, Dafka here, specifically here, in the intricacies of tzaras? What is it about these parashas of Tazria Metzora that lend themselves to this important lesson of how a person speaks? We know Chazal tell us in many, many places that tzaras and all of its different manifestations, the tzaras that appears on the body, and tzaras of begodim, and tzaras of batim, all the detailed halachas that take up most of the parashas of Tazria Metzora, ultimately all stem back from the Aveir of Lashon Hara. And the Aveir of Lashon Hara ultimately has its roots in a person's certainty, a person's arrogance, haughtiness. When one sees something, one sees somebody doing something, quick to form a judgment, quick to draw conclusions out of an all-encompassing feeling of, I know everything. Everything is clear to me. I'm certain about everything that I'm seeing. How do you know what you're even watching? You're reporting and you're telling a story. Perhaps you only know one side of the story. Perhaps there's another version of what's going on. Perhaps you're missing a piece of information. Perhaps you misinterpreted what you thought that you saw. Me, I know everything. Nega nirali babayis. No. Kia nega nirali babayis. Learn how to speak with a little bit of humility. Learn how to acknowledge that you don't necessarily understand, and the way things are perceived by you is not necessarily the entire picture. If a person is able to perfect that midah of no longer seeing nega, but rather seeing kinega, they saw that somebody did something wrong. Don't draw the conclusion. Don't rush to judge. If a person lives up to that type of a mindset, so then that will be the greatest way to avoid the goyim, to avoid tzaras in the future. So the significance of this message goes way beyond Parshas Tazria Metzora, but perhaps dafka in the Parshas Tazria Metzora where this message is driven home. And perhaps this is Nogeya in Yonah D'Yoma, not just in terms of the Parshas HaShavua, but in terms of the days of Sfira, which Chazal described to us, the tragedies of the death of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, which ultimately were brought about by Chatoy ben Amna Chaveiro, Shalom Nagu Kavod Zeh B'Zeh, that they didn't treat each other with the proper respect. Why not? What do you mean? These were great people. Why wouldn't I treat a person with such utmost respect? So the answer is, well, I saw the person doing something that I didn't approve of. I saw the person acting in a manner that perhaps wasn't befitting of respect. Really? Who's judging that? You're judging that. Are you judging that with certainty? Are you judging that with conviction? Are you absolutely 100% certain that the person no longer deserves your respect? No, we don't speak like that. We're not nega nearly about. We're kid nega. Maybe sometimes we see things that concern us. Sometimes we see things that bother us. And we have to try to determine, try to understand, get a better perspective. So before we jump to conclusions about Benam L'Chaveiro, before we jump to conclusions in the world of Lashon Hara, let's not forget that important lesson of the one letter of the Torah, the letter Chof. It's not a negatively rebellious. Learn to speak kin negatively rebellious, and hoping this chus about perfecting ourselves in this very, very, very small midah. Because Baruch will give us a proper set to the Shmaya that can impact in our entire relationship with Benam L'Chaveiro. Good Shabbos to everybody.